What up? What it is? What's poppin'? It's the neighborhood nice guy, K.Dot, aka Professor Dot, and class is in session. Welcome to another episode of Jump Ball and Study Hall. And I have none other than a very special guest, a very special person, a very intelligent person that I would consider one of the most intelligent minds in sports. And we heard she's a big deal, but don't tell her that. So we have none other than Meghan Hall of USA Today's For the Win. She is a staff writer for USA Today's For the Win. How are you doing this evening?
Well, first of all, I'm flattered. Wow, that is one heck of a compliment. I don't even know what to say about that. I'm doing amazing now. Thank you. Thank you so much. As the kids say, I'm living the dream always.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is such a great honor to have you on the show. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting things in regards to, of course, what has been transpiring the past few weeks, maybe even going as far as the past month regarding the WNBA and a little bit of college. Make sure you guys check out her recent piece talking about Dawn Staley and talking about pretty much how some teams are ducking smoke for next year. They're ducking smoke. So, make sure you guys check that out. But while we're on the subject, let's just briefly talk about that. So I know that you wrote the piece regarding Don Staley revealing that it's been very difficult scheduling games for 2024, 2025. So what do you think about that, and how should we as consumers of the game take that? Because what's up with people ducking smoke?
Well, I think it's a very interesting thing. I feel if you saw what Don Staley just did, you would be like, no, I'm not signing up for this. Absolutely not. Get somebody else to do it. It's above me. I'm not doing it. But I think it's more so the fact that she's probably not gonna take too much of a step off, right? Like they're only losing one starter in Camila Cardoso and everybody else is coming back. So it's like, all right. So we've kept the core intact here, which means that South Carolina is poised to probably make another run, if not get all the way back to a national championship. And I think the scariest part about that is no one expected them to do it this year. You have 5 brand new starters. Essentially, you got run out of the gym the season before with Caitlin Clark in Iowa. That was really, like, heartbreaking for them. They came back with a fire in their belly. And I think that from that opening tip in Paris to the like I mentioned today, the final seconds in Cleveland, like, it was always about Dawn Staley, and it was always about her believing in her crew, and one of the things she said earlier in the season was she lets them be them. She equated it to a daycare, she lets the daycare run, like, she doesn't really touch too much. So I think that's part of her secret sauce, and people are just not no, they're according to Dawn, they're not ready for that. They're like, "No, absolutely not." I can't say I blame them, no, I really can't say I blame them, but I would say for someone like me who watches a lot of college basketball, give me all the smoke, give me all the matchups. I want all the chaos. Like, I live for that sort of thing because that to me, that's healthy competition and that brings the best out of people.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And one thing that we mentioned from that perspective is even after the loss, I think that from what I've experienced with this South Carolina team is that and DA also said this in a previous podcast, we really thought that going forward, South Carolina would be the team to beat, and they could definitely get at least three of the four with the class that came in this past season. So they're one down. They have essentially three or more to go if it goes that way. But I do definitely agree with you in how the dynamic of what this season for South Carolina has been, and the entire dialogue in college basketball this year has been an incredible one. And I think that also from South Carolina's perspective, not necessarily hearing the 38 and 0 talk enough, in my opinion, has also been a spotlight a little bit as well. But I, Dawn has been going on her press run since this championship. We seen her in Orlando at Disney World, turned around, and we saw her in Philly in game 4 of the Eastern Conference first round matchup with the New York Knicks with the 76ers. So it's been really good for Don Staley so far. So let's just briefly just keep talking about that. What do you think going forward in 2024, 2025? What do you expect from this South Carolina team?
Yeah, honestly, I think I expect more of the same. I'm not gonna be honest with you. I thought too much about it, honestly, in terms of, hey, we just paused the season, end of the season, and we've been straight into the WNBA draft. But I would say that in reflecting on that season and really just looking back at it, we really were not making enough noise about just how good this South Carolina team was. They had to do it with a little bit of luck. I think about that Cardoso 3-point like bank shot to beat Tennessee. That is definitely, it's your time. Like it's just it's
Absolutely.
your time. But I think that is what makes this so special that you could see them doing much of the same. They got some talent coming in. Joyce Edwards is coming in. Like Dawn Staley's recruiting abilities are just like I get it. If I were in that position, if I were coming straight out of high school and I was a hooper and I knew I'm top of the class, whatever, yeah. If Dawn Staley comes calling, I'm going to go listen at minimum. I'm going to go listen. Yeah, I don't really expect them to take too much of a drop off. I'd be curious to see who steps into that 5 spot with Cardoso gone, but I don't expect too much of a drop off. I expect another undefeated season? No, probably not. But do I expect them to have a pretty darn good season? Yeah, I can't. Maybe I'm gonna knock on every piece of wood here, but I can't see them losing more than 15 games or something of that nature. It just doesn't necessarily equate to me in my mind, especially with the way that Don Staley makes these adjustments to teams. If you saw throughout the season, they were for sure a second half team. They got close. They got close to being upset a couple of times. And they were just gritty. They just grinded it out. They are, and I don't like using the word clutch because that definition changes with everyone, but some big shots when the lights are the brightest, yeah, they know how to make them. So I don't expect too much of a fall off.
And just pivoting to another SC, I'm really interested in Southern Cal coming in next season because there was some news that dropped this past week with Kiki Iriafen and even with TVO with I'm sorry. I'm so jumbled with her last name, but Talia Van Hall committing to joining Coach Gottlieb and the Phenom and Juju Watkins in Southern Cal. And that has changed like the dynamic of what this transfer portal has brought to us in transfer portal mania these past few weeks. So, what do you think about this particular move? And with the number one class coming in, where do you see Southern California in this particular season coming in 2024, 2025?
Oh boy. I'm not even gonna lie. I let out a little bit of a scream when I saw that news like come across my phone. I was like, what did I just see? I think it honestly, I'm not shocked per se. I think Juju has reinvigorated a USC team that had honestly seen better days. To take your team on a deep run throughout the NCAA tournament as a freshman, like that speaks so much volume. And I think what Lindsay is building at USC is attractive to people, right? Once Tara retired, it was like, "Okay, where's Kiki gonna go? She wants to stay on the West Coast. Okay, great." I don't think people saw USC though. That wasn't I don't think people were like, "Oh yeah, she's definitely gonna go." No, but now you gotta think about it. Mackenzie Forbes is gone, right? She's been drafted. So now someone has to be, and I don't like using the analogy, but it's the best I got. Like the Batman to Juju's Robin, so to speak, and vice versa. If Juju wants to be Batman and somebody else is Robin that day. But I think what I'm getting at is that there was a 1-2 punch with McKenzie and Juju, and they flowed their offense that way. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how they balance TVO, Kiki, and Juju in that team. But I will say this: I would be very afraid to play a team like that that's that stacked and everybody is a bucket. Everybody is a bucket. That's one of those where you're like, all right, everybody pull your bootstraps up, wrap in here. We got a task ahead of us. But I would say this, I cannot wait to see something like a USC SC matchup or whatever else. That's the popcorn matchup you want to see. That's the top talent that you want to see. I would say in terms of the recruiting class, there's quite a bit happening. This transfer portal is wild. You've got 7 players from Oregon State who have all like transferred. You got people moving all over the place. Haley Van Lith is now gone out of LSU. She's on to TCU. People are leaving TCU to go to Miami. There's so much happening. But I think that SC is poised to continue to make another deep run. And here's the other thing. I wouldn't bet my eyes at UConn either. I think Paige is Paige, and if you get a healthy AZ, I think you're gonna be just fine in terms of them driving that class, and I know they've got another recruit too, and my mind is failing me because it's 8:30 at night, but they have another top recruit that's coming as well to that class, and I think they're to that school, and I think they're gonna be just fine.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. Next season is going to be a very special one, a very great one. And let's pivot a little bit into the WNBA draft. Obviously, the draft occurred on April 15th. It was at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and it was a very great atmosphere. Unfortunately, I wasn't there in person, but I was definitely in the Zooms. DA and Lauren were gracious enough to represent the 9450 in person, which was really cool, a really great experience. They called me Tex Winter that night, a play on the legend Tex Winter, who so-called created the triangle offense. I was pretty much texting him questions as they were moving the draftees along. So about this draft, this has been one of the most highly touted drafts that we've seen in a while. I would say since the Brittany Griner, Skylar Diggins, and Elena Deladon draft. What were your initial thoughts on the lottery, the top four picks, and did you anticipate the top four picks going the way that they did?
So it's funny that you asked that. So I'm going to answer your last question first, but I wrote a mock draft a couple days before the draft. It was basically like, hey, what's the wildest things that could happen that like nobody would see? And it basically was just a play on a tweet that I put out. And I was like, hey, basketball fans, tell me something that like is just absolutely chaotic that nobody would see coming. And I got a bunch of good responses, but then it made me think, could some of this stuff actually happen? So in the draft I wrote, I was like, hey, Camila Cardoso could go at 2. And people were like, what? And then it was, "Hey, Angel Reese is gonna tumble," and that absolutely sent people they were like, "Excuse me, what are you even talking about?" But I just wanted people to be aware that something could happen in those top 5 picks, and things got really juicy when Sparks are now in they have 2 picks in the top 4, so that was fun times.
Hmm.
And then the Lynx and Chicago swap picks. So it's very interesting to see that and now knowing the hindsight, Cheryl Reeve said just a little bit ago when they introduced Alyssa Peely that the target for them was always Alyssa Peely. The fact that the Sky felt like they had to move up to 7 was very interesting to me. Like they could have stayed at 8 and would have still got the person would still got Angel Reese. So I just thought just those little nuances are very interesting to me. But I think overall this draft class was exciting. I think the top picks went about as expected, give or take a little swap here or there. I didn't really have anything that really stunned me. Other than the dream, I would say towards the bottom half of the first round, all 3 of their picks were international players. And that was like, okay, what's happening? Where are we going? That sort of thing. And not that I like was questioning, I just was like, okay, where's the vision? Let me think here. Because I fully expected them to probably take a big because they in my opinion, they needed one. I would not have been shocked to see them take obviously like a guard. They're all needs, but it's just it's very interesting that like these players won't play now, they'll play next season. But my
Absolutely.
mind is okay, so are they moving towards 2025 or moving towards is this season a punt? And I don't mean that like in a rude sense, but it's just, hey, are we all in this season? Or just we're like, hey, we're this is just we wanna get deeper in the playoffs. Like, we made the playoffs, now we wanna get deeper. Maybe we wanna make the 2nd round, that sort of thing. That's where I had to think about some of these moves. But overall, like, to be honest with you, I had to go sit on the plane and digest this draft because being there in person, it was zooming. Like, maybe it seemed normal time for anybody else that was watching it, but anybody that was in that room, they were flying girls through there. Like, as soon as you would get done with someone, "Okay, we have so and so coming. We have so and so coming." And I was like, "Wait a minute. I can't think. I can't process." It's like, I gotta think. I gotta speed think my questions and that sort of thing. Like, it was just I think it was really a reminder that this is a really special class. We wanna get as many people as possible to the media and make sure that we get their questions, but, oh my gosh, yeah, it was quite an event, and then, honestly, the things did not start coming to me until probably 2 days later where I did my, like, winners and losers of the draft. I was like, "Oh, yeah, this happened, and oh, yeah, this happened." What? I had to think 2 days later, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Okay, alright, now we're good here."
So while we're on the subject, because I'm very intrigued, obviously I've read it, but I want to hear it from the horse's mouth herself. Who do you think were your winners and losers of this draft? from a team perspective? And if you can, for your winners, can you just give me one thing for those winners that would intrigue you most about them coming into training camp with those draft picks?
Yeah, I'll start with the aces. One of the weak points of the aces, if you wanna call it that, was their bench production was something that became their Achilles heel, and it was really cool to see them turn that on in the finals when they had to because they were down multiple starters. So I was not shocked to see them come back and get their bench. What I was stunned to see them do was to draft Kate Martin, De'Asia Fair, and Liz Kitley, and I was like, "What fresh hell is this? Because what did I just see? And who let them do this?" I literally was like, everybody's a dog. Like a healthy Liz Kitley, dog. Deasia Fair, dog. Kate Martin, dog. And I was like, this is literally sorcery. This is absolutely sorcery. I think I don't know what training camp will look like. It would be great, of course, if all 3 were able to make the roster. I know that's not the reality, unfortunately, but I'm rooting for them because, oh my gosh, that is a draft. That is definitely a draft. And I will also say this, what people may not be thinking about is, like, Deasia Fair behind Chelsea Gray, like, that seems like almost unfair. That's your successor right there, and she's a 5'5", like, hooper. I have
Talk
so much
about it.
respect. Yeah, I have so much respect for her as a small athletes unite. Like, so much respect for her. Go out there and she's just doing it. Like, size be darned, that matters nothing. And I think people see that dog in her. Other teams that I would pick the winners, I would definitely say the Sparks, Cam and Rakia. I had Rakia sneaking up into my top 3 for a minute now. I knew it was gonna happen. I thought she was gonna go to the sky because I thought I see a lot of Kalia Copper in her game, and so I was like, "Oh, that's a perfect replacement. Woo, let's go." But then when they came back and got Rakia at 4, I was like, "Okay, why not?" And Rakia said something during the draft. "I know if I get beat off the dribble, Cam's gonna block a shot into the stands." And that just made me giggle so much. But it was true. She was already thinking about the possibilities with Cam. And I think that they vibe very well. They were on SportsCenter yesterday and did a little segment talking about the Sparks are probably gonna surprise some folks with what they've got there. So I definitely think the Sparks are big winners. It's hard to replace a NECA. It's really hard, right? It's just not even gonna come to fruition for a couple of years, but I think with 2 core pieces like that, you at least have attempted to replace some sort of
Absolutely.
production, some sort of, "Hey, this is my franchise player." I think the Sparks won. I'd even say the Sky as well. I Let me say this, Sky had a really interesting offseason. I wasn't even sure where they were going for half the offseason, especially after Ka got traded. I was like, I officially don't know. I officially don't know. Ka got traded, Courtney Williams left, several other people left in free agency. It just wasn't it didn't feel great, let me say that, in the offseason. But for them to get Camilla, which was great, and then come back and get Angel, I wasn't quite sure about how Angel will fit on that team, but I'm really intrigued to see what they come up with. Okay, nobody's gonna get any rebounds on us, and I'm like, Angel Reese specialty? Rebounds, for sure. And I think also you can see that she's developing more of her game already. She's trying to come up with that face-up game. Definitely the three-point shot, which we didn't see her shoot as much, obviously, in college. So, yeah, she's gonna have to add that to her repertoire, to her bag in the WNBA. I'm excited to see what happens there. I think outside of that, Seattle. Seattle had I thought I had a really sneaky good pick in Nika Mole. I was I thought Nika might go to the Liberty because you want a defensive guard who can still score. And I thought the Liberty really struggled with their perimeter defense quite a bit throughout the stretch of the playoffs and in the finals. And I'm like, if you want a dog on defense and someone who can still knock some shots down too, Nico was there. I had her mock there as well. I thought it was a great bit. But I also like the ability of for probably her to be in Seattle. Now you got Ezzy, you got SDS, you got NECA, you've got Nico on there as well. Like oh my goodness, the possibilities. Jewel, of course, don't let me forget Jewel. But yeah, the possibilities there in Seattle, like they're gonna be really nice. And they just added more talent to their roster. But I thought these were teams that like they just home run picks really throughout the draft.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And just to talk about Angel just a little bit more, for me, I know at 7, that's where I had her at in my mock draft. I think that when we talk about from an offensive standpoint and how she's going to be able to develop, not only developing that from that standpoint, but the development in what coach Teresa Weatherspoon is going to provide for her as well. Teresa Weatherspoon has been considered one of the best development coaches, even when you go back to when she was with the New Orleans Pelicans. And it's going to be great to see what Angel is going to be able to do because everybody, if they are in tune with what Teresa Weatherspoon's repertoire is and development is, look at Zion Williamson and his ability to enhance his playmaking abilities. And I think that's one underrated skill that Angel Reese had even when she was in college. When you go back to her Maryland days, she did more than just was a 20 and 10 person. She was able to make passes off out of the double team because she was focused on a lot. Moving on to LSU, even though she didn't have as much doubles, when she was doubled, I do feel like she made a lot of the right plays out of those double teams and a very underrated passer. You are absolutely correct with all of your winners in this draft, and Nika Mule to Seattle was very good. I also had Nika Mule going to the Liberty, but I believe I had her in the second round as opposed to 11. But Marquisha Davis at 11 is very sneaky to me, and Imma tell you why. There has been rumblings in training camp saying that she has been killing the first 3 days. So, now I am excited to see what she's able to provide. Definitely a 6-foot guard, very long wingspan, has the ability to drive and draw fouls with the best of them. Even though we would have liked to see, more of a maybe point guard type, they still need a perimeter defense, and who else better you can get with Marquisha Davis there? So that was really good. So I want to talk about one thing, and after we talk about this, obviously, I'm not going to keep you long. Let's talk about the business side of the WNBA for a minute because I've been entrenched into this collective bargaining agreement for a while now, and from my perspective, obviously, I think that the CBA was signed to the extent of this is just my opinion on it. It was signed to the extent of let's get what we can in the opportunity that we can get it when it comes to the salary cap, when it comes to certain type of marketing deals that the women will be a part of. But there's still a lot of work to be done. So with the pending TV deal that Kathy Engelbert has obviously been talking about, what do you think of this CBA? And obviously they're going to opt out after this year. That they have the choice to opt out in November, which where it'll expire in 2025. But obviously they're going to opt out. And the president, Nneka Bumike, has definitely hadn't said it verbatim, but obviously we know what's gonna happen. So with the in lieu of the new TV deal and this new CBA, what would you think or what would you expect to happen to make sure that we know that the equity these women for sure are deserving of, what the equity looks like moving forward with this new CBA, pending this new TV deal?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I would say that you're gonna see a flip here, a switch, here, because now people are seeing the value in women's basketball, right? The value in women's sports. Invest in women is something we hear constantly now. And the thing is, if you're new here, this seems amazing. This seems fantastic. But it's always been like that. It's whether or not people value what they saw. And I'll be the first to tell you, I didn't watch too much WNBA before what, June of last year? I didn't watch too much women's college basketball before March of last year. And my journey has always been, okay, I'm here, but let me scan. Let me see what's going on. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, why did I not get here sooner? Like I need to be here. And I haven't left, obviously, clearly since then. But what I've tried to do is shed light on the issues that have been plaguing the league in terms of the CBA, in terms of like today, we heard Caitlin Clark talk about charter flights and things of that nature. These are all going to be topics that will be discussed in this new CBA, particularly because the price has gone up. And I don't mean the literal price, literally, the value of these players has gone up. They are asking for their pay me what I'm worth. NECA said it in free agency. One of the reasons why she went to Seattle was because they had invested in their athletes. This brand new practice facility that you're seeing, $65 million practice facility. NECA said, hey, that looks to me like my worth reflected back to me. And it's investment, like that's what people want to see. They want to see that become the standard for players. I want to see charter flights become the standard for players. This media rights deal that is pending for sure is going to open up the door in terms of salary, in terms of opportunities, but you've slowly been seeing it outside of the CBA before now. So if you noticed, if you think back last year, WNBA announced several partnerships. The biggest one that comes to my mind is like Skims, for example, right? That was huge for them to invest in the NBA and the WNBA. But my point being is that these are partnerships because companies are seeing the value they are sowing into these athletes. All of that takes into consideration how much of a revenue pot, so to speak, that you have for these athletes. And in my mind, I would love to see athletes get to $1 million plus. I would love to see where this is not even a thing, where it does not even become a question that, oh, this player is going to make XYZ. But a lot of it has to be with the value, and a lot of it has to be with the storytelling as well. And that's the underrated, that's the underlying thread in this whole CBA conversation. Is that's what people aren't realizing is that like these issues have been around. They've been around for a minute. But now all of a sudden everyone's a CBA expert, everyone's a marketability expert, everyone knows everything because, oh, this draft class made them bring the conversations back to the table. Now everyone's up in arms about it. And now people are just like, what do you mean they're only making $76,000 their first year? Why are they only making 300,000 in 4 years? People are just appalled, but not realizing that this league is 28 years old. 28. And I don't think people have really short memories, but the NBA didn't start making money until well into past its 30s, right? Like, just keep going past. And so all of a sudden, that's the comparison. The NBA does this, and the NBA, yes, because it's been around for over 75 years. I would hope that they
Absolutely.
would be there. So you're talking about the WNBA being a relatively young league where people are still understanding the importance of investment and putting this money there. I think you're going to see a lot come out of the CBA. I think for sure that there's going to be some hard selling points. Charter flights might come up and be that hard point. For sure, this media rights deal, to be honest with you, WNBA is already dipping its hand, so to speak, in places for these rights deals. Amazon Prime, Aya, see wherever, like you name it, somebody is going to potentially knock on the WNBA's door and say, "Hey, we want in." And that's where you want. That's what you want in terms of being able to add that investment to the salaries of these players. But I will be curious to see what November looks like. Like once we get
Yes,
past the off season, like how spicy is it gonna get
absolutely.
with these conversations?
Yeah, and you know what? Let me be a fan just for a brief second because you mentioned Amazon Prime, Ion, even let's even throw in the streaming services, Paramount Plus, CBS, Viacom, and all of them.
Yeah,
If I had the choice as a fan, NBC, Universal, Peacock, guys, remember that it's there. I'm a nostalgia guy.
yeah,
I've been watching the WNBA since its inception, and hearing that round ball rock. If I can hear round ball rock, and if round ball rock can be marketed towards the WNBA side, do you know how many more fans you would get from a nostalgia standpoint that will easily gravitate just because of round ball rock alone? Yes, I know Fox has done it in the college basketball realms. Obviously, they've snuck it in with UConn games, Iowa games this year when the Big Ten were playing on Friday nights, and even if I'm not mistaken, the Pac-12 as well. But it's there, and just like you said, just from an overall perspective of everybody being appalled, and this is a trigger phrase nowadays. The think pieces are now think piecing, and because now they become a fan of women's basketball, and now they're realizing the inequities that that is going around, and now they're asking why the guys that were here were talking about it for a long time. And guess what you guys said? It's not worth anything. It's not worth of any value. But now we have someone in a Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and even South Carolina that has opened up the spectrum of what women's basketball looks like and what the future could be. It's gained attention and it's worth the value that it's always been. So I think that from that perspective, obviously we know that the CBA is going to be looked at heavily, and the players and hopefully the union looks at those particular deals and be very meticulous in what they're looking to see. We have a case where currently they can make up to 50% of revenue if revenue profits at the end of the season is profitable for the league. And If it's not, then they can only get, I believe, up to 20 or 25% of that. They don't see marketing in their jersey sales right now, which is appalling. And I'm like, so you mean to tell me someone who is extremely popular can't even see money from jerseys that we purchase right now? That is mind-boggling to me. But I do believe that from just a business perspective and overall perspective, is definitely going to predicate itself on this new TV deal. And hopefully we see this TV deal go through the roof based off of the ratings that we've seen this past year in women's college basketball and that translating into the pros. And it's going to be an incredibly exciting season. So going into the season, what are you anticipating coming into the season, and who do you think first off, let's just start off with something very simple. What team, and I know that training camp just started and we don't have final rosters, but in your mind, what team or teams are you anticipating coming right out the gate and saying, "Listen, we're not playing any games," minus the Las Vegas Aces?
You know I'm gonna start. I think you gotta put the Liberty there. I
Mhm.
don't think that they're gonna take a just a drastic step down. Like, maybe I'm wrong, and we'll come back to this and be like, "Meg, you totally said that." Hey, anything can happen. But honestly, I'm gonna put this out here because I think what she's going to do for that team is going to pay dividends for them. So I gotta say the Indiana Fever. They showed some real heart down the stretch of the season. They won 13 games last year. That's it. And 27 losses. But they were fighting, fighting. Look, there's some grit there, there's some heart there. I think what you're gonna see Caitlin do is turn into more of a facilitator, which is what I've been banging the table for weeks now is, "Hey, this is great." But I think her as a facilitator is super, super underrated, and
Very
I think
dangerous.
more people need to be, like, banging the table for that. I think this duo of her and Aaliyah Boston, oh boy, I could
Mm,
see I could see it unraveling a couple of teams. But I definitely want to see what the Fever do. I won't say they're gonna come out and obviously start the season, I don't know, 10-0 or anything else like that. But I could see them getting through the first, quarter of the season and be like, "Okay, hey, we're in a good spot. Maybe we've half our win total now." I think there's a lot of energy in Indiana around the Fever, a lot of fans who are super, super excited about what the Fever are doing. And I will say this, to see Erica Wheeler just absolutely dive in headfirst with the, like, big sister role to Caitlin Clark is great to see, and I think that will help Caitlin become even more confident at the next level. We know she's going to take the logo threes, we know she's gonna take the big shots, like, I'm not worried about that. But when I say that in terms of trusting her teammates, trusting where to put the ball, putting people in spots to succeed, running the offense, that's what I mean. It helps to have a vet behind you, pushing you, being confident. So that's where I see. I'm curious to see what the Wings do without Satu.
yeah.
So Satu won't even be available till we'll just call it after the Olympic break, right?
Yeah, yeah,
What do the Wings do without her? Because I think they could carry themselves without Satu, but she's a major portion of what they do. The In my mind, when I think of the Wings, it's Arike, it's Satu, it's Tierra, like, that's first immediately, and that's no disrespect to Natasha Howard, but that is just immediately, whoop, these 3 players right here, and when you take out Satu, it's, okay, so who else is gonna step up for this production? I would be curious to see if the Wings take a step down without Satu's production, without her leadership there. Very curious about that. Maybe I'm a little biased here because I cover them and they're great, but
let's talk
Atlanta Dream is
yes,
someone who they have to come out of the gate firing, right?
I 100% agree. Yes.
And I don't mean that in the terms of they're not capable. This is an expectation now at this point. This core has been together for several years, give or take the flip of a piece or two. But Ryan, Leash, CP, Nia, you're now adding Jordan Canada once healthy into that mix. Jordan's also played with Nas in the offseason. Haley is very familiar with her as well. That's a really good mesh. Plus Tina Charles adding some depth there. I think they have to. They skidded their way into the playoffs, and then they essentially got shot out the gym by the Wings, and it was so disappointing. It was so infuriating as someone who covers them because how
Absolutely.
talented they are. And I think it was a couple of things. I think it was still a little bit of youth, a little bit of Tanisha Wright growing in real time with this team. But now they got to figure it out, right? Like the expectation at minimum is get past the first round of the playoffs. If that
Absolutely.
doesn't happen, then yeah, more and more eyes might start happening about what do we need to do about this team.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think I think a lot of people are sleeping on the dream as well. I think I just saw someone say a comment there, but yeah, for sure, sleeping on the amount of talent that the Dream have. Outside of that, I would be curious to see how the Sparks look, this new look Sparks. You've now speaking of Atlanta Dream, you've got Ari McDonald, you've got Mo Billings on the team. You talk about a lot of, like, firepower in terms of a tiny little I won't say tiny, but tiny, like, little bursts of firepower with Ari McDonald. That's what she reminds me of, is she's always 100% go. If you need a burst off the bench, there you go. You got it. Would be very curious to see what happens with adding them into the mix along with Cam and Rakia. Azura Stevens just stay healthy. Like those are things that we want to see from that Sparks team. So yeah, those are my teams that I'm like, I would love to see y'all everybody just come out the gate firing. Like absolutely come out of the gate firing. Because that's gonna make this league get more eyes, I think, but it's also gonna make people pay attention because it's gonna say, okay, I see what we all did in the offseason and now we've come to play.
yeah. I said I 100% agree with you. I actually 1,000 or million, 2,000,000, 100,000,000. Like I agree with everything that you're saying in this regard. And it's going to be really exciting just as a whole. I'm excited not only to cover this year, but to also be a fan of it. And it has been such a great pleasure, Megan, just talking with you. As I said in the beginning of the show, one of the most intelligent minds of the game in sports, period. Make sure, everybody, make sure you check out Megan's work for the win. And with USA Today, she writes incredible pieces. But I'm not going to only say it, but I want you to go ahead and plug everything that you have going on. What do you have currently? What do you have going on in the future? And where everybody can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me if you're in Atlanta, you will definitely see me at Atlanta Dream Games. I will be there. Now considered one of the core media members there, so I'm super excited to have that connection with the organization. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's one of the best things I get to do outside of work, and I do that on a freelance basis. Yeah, you can find my work on ftw.usatoday.com. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. Shout out to you,
Just
Beth.
shout out to Darius right
Yeah,
there.
shout out to Terry's. That just made my whole day. But no, ftw.usatoday.com. You're gonna see me pushing more WNBA content. That's something that I asked for when I first got there to for the win, and I've wholeheartedly taken that to the reins. I can't share too much about what I have coming up because some of it is some things
Ooh.
that I have in the works. I will say that yeah, there's some heat coming like very soon, so please look out for that. I cannot wait for this to drop. But yeah, just look forward to me highlighting the league. And one of the things that I try to do is to highlight more than just the players that we hear at the top, right? If there's a cool moment, if there's a cool story, if there's a cool angle, you could probably believe that we're going to cover it. If there's, hey, who is this player? Yeah, there 9 times out of 10, we've probably written about it. And that's what I hope to do. That's not only for anybody who watches the league now, but that's for new people too, because I know they're going to have a whole bunch of questions and things of that nature. I do have a preview coming of the season, which is going to be great. Some things that I have that are like, hey, look out for this storyline, look out for this. If you like this player, go look at this player. That's the type of things that I like to do. You probably saw that with my college coverage. It's going to continue in WNBA. So shout out for those things. Other than that, find me on the socials. Twitter is probably my, or I guess do people still call it Twitter? Because I do. Uh,
I still call it Twitter. Yeah.
It's mama named it Twitter. I'm gonna call him Twitter. But
Exactly.
yeah, find me on Twitter. It's ITF Megan L Hall, and that's Megan with an H because I'm a little fancy. Same thing on Instagram, same thing on TikTok. Yeah, all the socials, it's probably the same thing. But yeah, come find me, come say hi, come tweet me, whatnot. We'll have some conversations. But I try to do my best to keep people informed about all things women's basketball and WNBA.
Yeah. And that is super, super incredible. You heard it. Make sure you go follow Megan on Twitter and all of her socials. Also, make sure you guys follow Jump Ball and Study Hall on Twitter. That's at J Ball, the letter N, Study Hall. Again, that's J Ball, the letter N, and Study Hall. All right. At J Ball and Study Hall. You can also follow me at K.Dot 3H on Twitter, at K.Dot 3H on Instagram. Make sure you guys follow the 9450 on YouTube at the 9450 on Twitter. That's at the 9450 on Instagram at the 9450 underscore. Listen, it's been a great pleasure having you, Megan. And we're going to end it right here. We did it in record time. I love that. Right. Even though I was a little late, I will admit that. I apologize for that. My Mac decided to want to update on me. Say, hey, no, wait, let's update first. But I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank everybody who was in the chat. Shout out to you, Darius. As always, you've always been such a great supporter of the 9450. So shout out to you. But this has been Jump Ball and Study Hall. I am your host, Kevin K. Lewis, aka Professor Dot, and class dismissed. See you guys later. Peace.